Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we're diving into something really profound. We are going to break down the groundbreaking insights of Dr. William Dodson, and we're looking closely at a deeply painful, yet incredibly misunderstood part of the ADHD experience. If you, or maybe someone you love, has ever felt totally overwhelmed by this intense, unseen emotional world, well, you're definitely going to want to pay close attention to what we've prepared for you today.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever been called too sensitive? Or, maybe even labeled a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? It's a shocking contrast, right? Going from a carefully masked, put-together version of yourself to suddenly experiencing this unpredictable, explosive shift in your emotions. If you've ever felt this, or just been completely misunderstood by your loved ones when it happens, I want to validate you right now. There is a real medical reason for it. And part of that reason actually stems from a pretty shocking statistic. Get a load of this. By the third grade, so we're talking just 8 or 9 years old, a child with ADHD has heard 20,000 additional negative corrective messages compared to their neurotypical peers. That is 20,000 extra times a child is essentially told that who they are is wrong.
To keep things simple and lower the cognitive load, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1. Defining rejection sensitive dysphoria. 2. The roots of the pain. 3. Masks and coping mechanisms. 4. RSD across the lifespan. 5. Building your emotional armor. And 6. A lifelong path to healing. All right, let's jump right into section 1, defining rejection sensitive dysphoria and unmasking the monster in the room.
So Dr. Dodson coined this specific usage of rejection sensitive dysphoria, or RSD. The word dysphoria is literally Greek for unbearable. Now, RSD isn't just a character flaw or a mild dislike of criticism. It's an exquisite, catastrophic sensitivity to the perception, and by the way, it doesn't even have to be real, that someone has withdrawn their love, approval, or respect. It hits suddenly. We're talking 0 to 100 in the blink of an eye. It's a physically unbearable pain that can literally knock someone with an ADHD nervous system to their knees, leaving them feeling completely cut off and profoundly lonely.
If you're sitting there hearing this and thinking, wow, that's me, you are absolutely not alone. When Dr. Dodson screens for this lifelong sensitivity in his practice, a massive 90 to 95% of his patients identify with it strongly. They usually reply with something like, "Oh my God, you've been following me around my entire life."
Moving right along to section 2, the roots of the pain and how this trauma compounds early on.
Remember those 20,000 extra negative messages we talked about? Well, they sound a lot like this. Sit down. Stop that. Stop fidgeting. What is wrong with you? You're way too intense. It's this rapid-fire daily insistence to a neurodivergent kid that they are unacceptable just the way they are, and they need to change immediately. This creates compounding trauma. It's basically a death by 1,000 cuts that makes them hypervigilant to any future rejection.
Here is the absolute most crucial point. While the trauma of all that constant criticism is immense and painful, ADHD itself is a genetic, biologic, and neurologic condition. You're born with it. It's literally how your brain is hardwired. You can't just willpower your way out of it, and nobody magically gets a brand new nervous system on their 18th birthday. Because these kids are asked to solve a problem that just has no neurotypical solution, the social cost is devastating. Studies show a heartbreaking 70% of third graders with ADHD do not have a single friend. And why is that? It's the emotional flooding. Honestly, other kids don't mind the fidgeting so much, but the explosive emotional outbursts that come with early RSD end up getting these children completely ostracized.
Okay, section 3, masks and coping mechanisms. This is how people try to hide their true self to survive. So Dr. Dodson identifies 3 primary ways people cope to avoid this catastrophic criticism. First up is avoidance. That's just deciding to quit before you even start. They don't ask people on dates, they don't apply for challenging jobs because the mere thought of rejection is just too devastating. Second is people-pleasing. They learn to instantly scan a room and anticipate everybody else's needs to stay safe, but they completely lose track of what they actually want in life. And third is perfectionism, becoming this unassailable overachiever so no one can ever find a flaw to criticize. As you can imagine, it is incredibly exhausting.
The real tragedy of this mask, though, it's built on a foundation of massive shame. It leads to this really profound loneliness. Even when a person with RSD gets married and is deeply loved, there's this nagging, terrible fear that their partner only chose the mask. They constantly worry they've never actually been loved for the genuine person underneath.
Let's look at section 4,
RSD across the lifespan, tracking this from the playground all the way to the porch.
If left unaddressed, we can trace how this pain evolves. We go from the lonely 8-year-old on the playground with no friends, to the highly explosive, misunderstood teenager, right through to the adult whose romantic relationships break down because their partner is constantly walking on eggshells. The RSD triggers often come out as an accusation that the partner is bad, which just destroys intimacy. And finally, without intervention, it ends at 85 years old with profound mourning and regret for a life unlived, all due to fear.
But listen, RSD isn't always just internalized sadness. For many, particularly men, it externalizes. Check out the shocking statistic. In one sample, 50% of court-mandated anger management cases, we're talking domestic and road rage, actually had unrecognized ADHD and RSD. It manifests as this sudden, white-hot, uncontrollable rage at the person or situation they perceive as having wounded them so severely. Which brings us to Section 5, building your emotional armor. Let's talk about the concrete medical solutions. There is a massive distinction when it comes to treatments here. Stimulants are great. They help with performance and distractibility. But to actually subdue the catastrophic emotional response of RSD, doctors like Dodson look to non-stimulants, specifically older blood pressure medications called alpha-2A agonists. So how do doctors figure out who actually needs these? Dr. Dodson uses 4 really fascinating screening criteria. First, are you a night owl whose brain just turns on when the sun goes down? Second, do you have multiple, completely separate thoughts demanding your attention all at the same time? Third, can you even remember a time when you felt genuinely mentally and physically at peace? And fourth, of course, the lifelong rejection sensitivity itself. Now, for the roughly 30 to 60% of folks who respond beautifully to one of these medications, or in severe cases to MAOI antidepressants, the relief is quite literally life-changing, whether you're a child, a teen, an adult, or elderly. It provides them with what Dr. Dodson calls emotional armor. Potential rejections and criticisms, sure, they still happen in daily life, but they suddenly just bounce right off without wounding the person. It finally frees them up to drop the mask, and crucially, it stops the generational pattern of destructive parenting and relationship burnout. And finally, Section 6, a lifelong path to healing and shifting the paradigm entirely. We really need to stop looking at ADHD as just a deficit. Traditional theories often treat people with ADHD like they're broken, damaged neurotypicals who need fixing. Dr. Dodson's approach offers incredible empathic validation. You are a good, totally intact person. You simply have a second type of nervous system that operates by completely different rules of engagement. When you're aligned with your passions, you don't have a deficit of attention at all. You have an absolute abundance of it. You know, when Dr. Dodson talks to well-adjusted adults with ADHD, their success almost always traces back to a caregiver in their youth who gave them this profoundly protective 3-part message. First, I see you, and you are a good, hardworking person. Second, we don't know exactly what you're dealing with, but we will figure it out together. And third, I will never leave you alone with this problem. You must never leave a neurodivergent child alone to solve an impossible puzzle by themselves. We're wrapping up today's explainer with a pretty powerful exercise. I want you to imagine you're 85 years old, sitting out on a porch somewhere. To have lived your entire life without a single regret, what do you wish you hadn't passed by just because you were too afraid of rejection? I challenge you to really look at that answer, utilize the medical and psychological tools we've explored today to finally drop that mask and ask yourself, what authentic life are you going to start living right now before it's too late?